Dayenu. It would have been sufficient. It would have been enough, or it would have sufficed. Hebrew is day in Hebrew is enough, and enu is the first plural suffix to us. This traditional upbeat Passover song is over 1,000 years old, and yet I feel like it speaks to us today in that what is enough? And I know after coming through what we have come through with COVID-19 and all the trials of this year, there's already been, I believe, 127 school shootings since the beginning of this year. And all the things in the world that are heavy and hard, how do we carry that? And what does liberation look like? And what is enough? I think as a people, we decide what is enough for our society. Is it enough that we have Haven House over here and people gather and have a place to stay during the day? Do we have enough beds for homeless people in the Chippewa Valley? Is it enough that people are hungry in a land of plenty? Is it enough that our legislature will not pass laws to regulate guns and that we have shootings as a regular occurrence? I know when I was a child, we did drills for nuclear war, and we did drills for tornadoes. And now my children in high school have experienced, and I know the children in this community experience active shooter drills and experience other bomb drills and bomb scares. So what is enough in our community? I think there's two ways of looking at, what is sufficient for us, like how, like in a society where we want so much, do we have enough? And I think it's also to say, is it enough what we give to others? And so when I think about that Dayenu, the blessing of having enough is a question that's personal, that we often feel lost in the desert of so many hard things and so many things that are tough. And yet yesterday, when I was here with Eloise Eland's family, who had come from the cities and all sorts of places, a Unitarian Universalist memorial is a special event. Usually at memorials that I've gone to, it can be you're going to hell, you might get saved, come to the altar, and it's not about the person, or it might just be an impersonal, our reward is in heaven, or something like that. But a celebration of life talks about the beauty and the story of a person. And this memorial was hours and hours of preparation. We had music, we had seemed like every member of their family got up and participated. And there was a surprise during the memorial. Eloise's daughter, Elisa Jo, got up and she said, my mom was a very funny lady and she loved to dance. And she said, so please rise in body or spirit. And we were going, what's going to happen? And she said, we're going to do the hokey pokey. And she said, and we did the hokey pokey at a memorial, at a celebration of life. And I thought, this is enough. This is a blessing. And, it's those cracks of light in the midst of so many things that we're trying to figure out in our society and our hearts. And if we just rest in the desert and feeling lost and in despair and anger and the bad news, we're going to stay lost. But when we can get up and do the hokey pokey and celebrate a beautiful life, a woman who was strong and spoke her mind and worked for justice, and her family, they sang up and they knew every word to We Shall Overcome. They knew every word. And so what I learned, I am not of Jewish heritage. I grew up Episcopalian, as some of you know. But in Unitarian Universalism, we draw from many sources of wisdom, and one of those is the Judeo-Christian sources. And 10% of Unitarian Universalists are Jewish from last count. We don't sit there and do a test of faith when you walk in our door, because some people might be Jewish Buddhist. Some people might be secular. Some people might become Jewish or be married to someone who's Jewish. But what we hope to learn from different sources is to find wisdom that we did not know before. And the Passover meal, if you've ever been to it, is beautiful. It is one of the most important holidays in the Jewish year. It marks the moment when Israel became a nation and when the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob emerged from slavery in Egypt to change the course of history. And it's a holiday of liberation, and it's celebrated at home at dusk. And even though it's a solemn religious event like a memorial or a celebration of life, it's also a joyous feast. And Jews celebrate their freedom from oppression. All of the members of the family, from the oldest to the youngest, take part in the Seder, which is the ritual Passover meal. Children play an important part since the Torah bids that they know the Passover story. And so we think about our own traditions. You know, what is it that we do at home or as Unitarian Universalists? Some people ask, you know, how is it that you set up a calendar of services each year if everybody has different beliefs? And what we try and do is we look at the major holidays like Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur or the Passover. And last year, Sue Beadle-Sism, who is working hard on her degree this year, last year she said we should do a Passover service. And so that was the first time that we had done one as a Sunday service, and we talked about the Ukraine and the Ukraine war and what it was like to celebrate and promote. For those online, we can hear the joyous sounds of children, which is also joyous, and to celebrate their liberation. So in our diversity of beliefs as Unitarian Universalists, what can we learn from the Passover story? You know, we think about we get lost in that sense of not enoughness. And after the challenges of the past few years, the uncertainty of January 6th, the invasion of the Ukraine, it felt like a desert that we had been wandering in for far too long. And I wanted a land of milk and honey. I wanted the Mass to go goodbye, and just to be able to sing, to be able to gather face to face, and to have the blessings of a community that was unafraid. I was so tired of being afraid. And I was so tired of sitting with people who were struggling with anxiety. And we look at our youth who came out of, who are coming back into schools now and the anxiety that they have faced. So here we are building the beloved community again, remembering our traditions, building our hopes and dreams of a better world, trying to find our way to a future. So what is it that is our blessing? What is it to be enough? And we think about right now in Nashville, a judge just made it that they were trying to pass that somebody told me the word. Drag shows, see? That drag shows were illegal. And people who were trans were so afraid and were hiring bodyguards. And yet a judge said, that's not legal. That's a First Amendment speech to do a drag show. And I remember I did a little dance at breakfast. I was like, thank goodness, somebody is standing up for freedom. And at this pulpit, we do not do partisan politics, but our fifth principle is the belief in the democratic process And we heard 2 people come up during Joys and Concerns and encourage everyone to vote and everyone to stand up for your rights. So it is enough that one person stood in the way of what was wrong. And it is enough that each of us goes out and does what our conscience calls us to do, because what else can we do? What else can we do when we're afraid and things are hard? We don't carry the whole world on our shoulders. We don't do it by ourselves. And that's the story of the Jewish people. That's the story of coming together and remembering the oppression, remembering the trials. And so for the world, the recent trials are the pandemic. The recent trials are this cruddy weather and the climate change that people are having to deal with, tornadoes everywhere, and so much that's hard, or violence. How do we address violence in our country or in the world? And we say, we have to vote our conscience. We have to vote what is on our hearts. And so we think about, what are the ways that we are already free? The liberation. We live in a free country. We can say what we want. We're free to go anywhere we please. And there were those that came before us who lit that way. We had suffragettes. We had people fighting against slavery. We had people fighting for the right to a 40-hour work week. We need to work on that some more. But freedom is not a simple state. We can be free on the outside, but constricted inside. There are so many ways in which our lives get narrow. Maybe for you it's health challenges or financial challenges, or that there's not enough to go around. Or we tie ourselves up through alcohol or some other addiction, through overspending or underspending, through over-focusing on status or power, or through a mindless stream of mindless activities on our phone. Or maybe we put too much weight on what others think. Or we put too much weight on what we think, our fear and anxieties. Or we act on impulse or don't act at all. There are so many ways in which we can limit ourselves and our freedoms to participate fully in life. The psychologist Erich Fromm wrote a book in 1941 about our tendency to want to escape from freedom. How the responsibility that comes with freedom can be so uncomfortable, we want to escape it. We allow ourselves to be enslaved by something or someone who tells us what to think or say, or things that distract us, by anything that gives us a feeling of security. William Ellery Channing was an early Unitarian, and he said, "I call that mind free which guards its intellectual rights and powers, which does not content itself with a passive or hereditary faith, but opens itself up to new truth as an angel from heaven, not the creature of accidental impulse, does not cower to human opinion, and resists the bondage of habits, sets no bounds to its love, delights in virtues and sympathizes with suffering, and casts out all fears save that of wrongdoing." So the Jews were seeking freedom from captivity. What is our captivity? Is it fear from the outside, fear from the inside? How can we liberate ourselves, our society? I want my transgender young adult child to feel safe. I want every person in this congregation to feel safe, to love, to believe, to speak out. For us not to have active shooter drills in our schools, to not have homeless on our streets. What is enough? And what do we celebrate when we do the hokey pokey? And we turn ourselves around. That's what it's all about. Amen.